Hey team, a very warm welcome to On the Pulse episode number 14. It is the Mesa Women's post show. We have had an incredible competition out in Arizona. We have had a week to reflect and gather ourselves again. And now we have the opportunity to talk about it. And I'm delighted to be joined by the one, the only Tommy Marquez, and of course, our resident coaching analyst, Seth Page, to take us through it. Gents, have we recovered? What have we been doing all week?
Well, let's see. Back home, I have a gym that we're kind of remodeling and expanding. So the second I got back home, in fact, the second I landed, I had to take an Uber to my gym and start construction again. So there's been no rest for me, but it's all good.
I think construction is the theme of this episode because I got home and immediately started digging ditches and trenching for footings for a foundation. So I think we were all a part of the rebuilding process this last week.
I honestly wish I could show you my my setup in my house right now because of building going on in every other room of the house. My living room is home to everything. And right now I've got 2 Echo bikes, 2 Concept 2 bike ergs, 2 sofas. Behind this is all my washing and an additional sofa. And that's how I live. Out there in the garden, there's 2 tires. We've got 2 of everything. I'll take a picture. We can all put our construction up on Instagram after the show.
Mine will definitely be up there.
Yeah. But honestly, it's wonderful but mental. And that is the life we live because in between the competitive fitness, chaos.
Yeah.
Guys, okay. Building renovations to one side, tour stop number 2, the results. It was a super exciting battle. We had some brand new winners. We had challengers who punched up like Annika Greer and Andrea Solberg. Laura Horvath was back to her best. And we had a little bit of kind of like day one leaders that at the end of the weekend, maybe weren't quite at the pace we expected. It was super exciting stuff. I mean, just your general overview of it, Tommy, just to kick us off.
Yeah, well, I'll stick with the rebuilding theme and a handful of athletes that I think rebuilt their season a little bit by a much improved performance from Tour Stop 1 to Tour Stop 2, and some did so by way of double-digit placement improvements. Andrea Solberg, 11 places improved from 1 to 2. Emma Tall moved up 10 spots on the leaderboard. And then a family affair with the Wells sisters combined 22 placings improved across the leaderboard. So able to make a big jump forward and set themselves up nicely.
What's your
Yeah, I
takeaway,
think
Seth?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway was that we started to see, like you'd mentioned, Laura come into form. We saw her, and everybody expected at Tour Stop 1 her to be running away with this potentially, and then she made mistake after mistake after mistake. It's clearly been ironed out because after her one little, I won't even call it a blunder, we all knew that she was going to struggle with one workout in particular. She's right on top and really, other than Emma, started to really show how much she can separate from the field in the final standings.
Well, she was a different winner and another person we can get very excited about, Tommy. What set her apart over the weekend?
Well, I think it's ultimately what has allowed her to be set apart over the course of the last few years. We saw her get back to being able to not be perfect, but be competent in accounting for those missteps, like Seth mentioned. In Pro 2, she had a 26th place finish, immediately bounces back with a second in Pro 3 to kind of wipe that away, at least mentally. And over the course of her career, that is what she's been able to do when she performs at a high level. So over the last 5 international comps across her career, she's had one of those quote unquote bad finishes in a handstand or handstand variation event, where she averages a 28th place finish. And that's even in events like Rogue, where there's only 20 athletes. But during those times, the very next workout on average, she has a 3rd place finish on average across her career in those 5 competitions. So all of those events, she managed to podium. 3 of those events, she managed to win. So really, that's kind of the canary in the coal mine for her of, hey, is she on her game? Can she rebound from a tough finish and then execute without those mistakes? And that's what she did this past weekend in Mesa. And I think it sets herself up to really kind of have her eyes forward towards Copenhagen and expectation that she can still take the season-long crown.
I think you nailed it, Tommy. And like she had that 26th place finish on the strict handstand pushup. I think we all expected it, even though maybe 26 was a little further down the leaderboard than people might have thought. But her other 6 workouts were all top fives. And that includes a single modality run workout and a single modality lift workout. Typically, when you have those two on a leaderboard, you see some little bit of polar opposites. Like when you look at Amy Kringle and some others who didn't really finish as high, but she has 2 top 5s in both those single modalities. I think that speaks volumes by itself.
I mean, you just look at that graphic and that consistency is unbelievable. Is she going to be the favorite to take these finals?
I mean, yeah, I would say so. It's hard to pick against someone with a track record like her, and with the finals points being worth double, she doesn't really have much of a gap to make up at all. Essentially, if she does win, she'll move ahead. Even if Amy Kringle takes second, who's the only athlete that's podium twice, she'll be ahead of her just based on how the points are distributed. So all Laura has to do is come out and win, which is really all you can do anyway. But I don't see how you'd pick against her based on her most recent performance. That'd be pretty tough.
Yeah, I'd agree with Seth there because you look at the point spread, only 30 points. That's essentially the difference between first and third once we get to Copenhagen. A longer competition, 4 days instead of 3. We've seen Laura really start to shine, especially in those Saturday, Sunday events across a 4-day competition, assuming that she has that one slip up early on in the weekend. And I think we tend to overlook the fact that she had all those mistakes in Tour Stop 1, but she still finished ninth. And for someone of her caliber, we talk about it like she finished in the bottom 10 or like outside the top 20. And it was still a top 10 performance, even with all those mistakes, which really highlights how good she is in those other areas to be able to buffer that. So 30 points back of the overall lead. I think with how she performed this last competition in Tour Stop 2, I think she should be considered amongst the favorites alongside Amy and Lucy as well.
One more thing I'll add too is I think with an athlete like Laura, more events, more workouts are better. So the more workouts you give her, the more she can pull away with those points and the more opportunities other athletes have to stumble. She really only has one place that she stumbles consistently. So the more you spread those out across 8, 10, 12 workouts, whatever it ends up being, the better it is for Laura.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, completely. And I guess another athlete to throw into that mix, you've mentioned a few already, has got to be Emma Tall. Like she's 12th in Tall Stop 1 up to a second place finish. And I know that she had a little bit of a partially torn shoulder muscle halfway through that first Tall Stop. So perhaps we haven't it's not a fair comparison to make, but she didn't finish below 10th all weekend. She won the third event and she finished day 2 in the lead. Now, there was obviously that kind of no rep issue and then going and getting that kind of rescinded. And I can imagine that does play on your mind a little bit, but the way that she kind of came back from that misstep and then kind of saw the weekend out, I think that's something that we've probably not seen from Emma while she's been competing in the larger European competitions before. It shows a great amount of growth in her ability to handle an entire competition weekend. And the entire build-up for her throughout the World Fitness Project kind of season has been totally different because she's now with the Proven HQ. She's got a brand new coach. I mean, she's been working with Philip Biscard and David Shrunky, her partner, for years now. And we've seen this coaching setup change. And Emma's looking like a completely different athlete. And I think, that combined with what we know that she is capable of. Someone said to me the other day that she's the most talented athlete they think they've ever seen on the floor, like another coach from a different programming house. And we've just never really seen her being able to execute her full potential. And last week, it really came to show that she could be a major podium contender at anything she enters if she can keep her mindset on track, which is cool.
Yeah. And I think we've all been kind of waiting for her to kind of find that potential on the floor in terms of execution. And you look forward now to what's ahead in Copenhagen, and the number of workouts is going to increase. And for someone like Emma, I think it's a really good opportunity to maybe shake some of the competitive narrative in terms of historical performance across her career. Because, when we do get to 7+ workouts or more, she doesn't perform quite as well when there's 7 or less. So I think the last being last year's Rogue, where she had a strong performance, which was their best performance when there was more than 7. And I think you look at how this last weekend went with a healthy shoulder. Tour Stop 1 is almost an anomaly for me. You look at her finishes in Pro 1, 3, and 5 in Indy. That muscle ups, pull ups, legless rope climbs, all 3 upper body pulling components that are one of the best things in her arsenal of skills. If you know anything about Emmental, and 2 of those 3 tests were her worst finishes overall. So that gave you a clue that she wasn't herself. To be able to rebound, like you said, coming to the weekend, I spoke with her a little bit before about that, feeling like she could showcase not just the skill that she has, but the high power output components to her game. I think that this is a better indicator of what we're going to see from her in Copenhagen, along with the fact that she was just announced to go to Rogue as well. I think that could be another confidence builder along that path.
So from the podium now, hanging out in Nashville, our second place finisher, Emma Tall, had the opportunity to catch up with our very own Tommy Marquez a little bit earlier on. This is what they had to say.
Joined now by Emma Tall, fresh off a second place finish at Tour Stop number 2 in Mesa, Arizona. Emma, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And so looking at your performance, which was phenomenal, and maybe touching on a few things, whether it's programming, your training prep, your execution on the floor, what kind of mix or blend of those 3 things really allowed you to perform at the level you did?
I would say the main thing is that I'm healthy and not hindered by my injury. And looking at the programming, I prefer the programming of Tour Event 1. It was more towards my strengths as an athlete, I think. But with still coming back for the injury from my shoulder injury and not being 100%, the events for Tour Stop 2 suited me better right now.
And maybe kind of touching on that a little bit, because obviously dealing with an injury is tough, especially in this sport. But how are you able to reset both mentally and physically in a way when your body doesn't perform the way that you expect or hope it to in Tour Stop 1, to then be able to kind of rally for Tour Stop 2?
It's not easy. I think going back to training and doing all the work that needs to be done, all the rehab, all of that stuff, I don't find that difficult because I'm really motivated to get back. But then to get back on the competition floor, having lost a bit of confidence for how it felt on Tour Stop 1, that's where the difficult part for me comes in. And it was definitely a journey during the weekend.
And speaking of that journey, I think there were a couple of cool touch points as far as the competition was concerned, and one of which I think was the clean. And correct me if I'm wrong. It was the first time you had cleaned 120 kilos, and it was the first time you got above 112 kilos in over 3.5 years. And with that being the case, how do you game plan on the competition floor when there can be such a wide range in terms of the weights lifted, and how do you leave room for yourself to be able to hit a personal best like that when maybe it might not be expected?
It's a good question, and I think the 8-minute window of just lifting whenever you want to, it gives you the opportunity to do just that. Like if you only have 3 lifts, I tend to be more on the secure side and maybe go a bit lighter than I'm actually capable of lifting, just because you only have those 3 lifts. But when you have 8 minutes, it gives you so much more freedom. And that's why I had loads of different plans going into the event, and I wanted to be aggressive, but then it's also end of day 2 and we've done quite a heavy leg stuff, so I wasn't feeling great warming up. But once you're out there on the competition floor, like, you always feel great.
Yeah, and how do you account for that adrenaline, right? Because everyone says that there's going to be the adrenaline and the competition influence, but can you reasonably account for that as far as like your warm up and initial lifts out there on the floor?
I think the first lift is almost always the hardest one, because you haven't lifted for a while. So if you're aware of that, then you can do that first lift and it can feel a bit shit, but you're confident that that was the worst one, and from now on it gets better even though you add weight on the bar.
And you certainly performed well, and hit a PR clean. But the other moment that I want to touch on before we let you go is the final workout, Pro 6. You're in a scenario where you essentially have to focus on one athlete. It's almost like a beat that athlete and you win scenario. And there's very few times when that is the case in this sport, when it's so hyper focused on just that singular race. Talk me through your mindset and where you were at as you got to the start mat there for that final event.
So with the final event being what it was, I kind of just needed to stay in my own lane for the first part of it. Both with the ring muscle ups and the snatches is something that I been putting a lot of work into, but also been struggling a bit of with overhead stability with the shoulder injury I had. So the pulling from the ring muscle ups and then going a bit fatigued into the heavy snatching, and then the overhead stability there really challenged me. And I knew that if I try to race for that part, it's a big chance that I'm going to start missing snatches, and you can't afford that in a workout like that. So my strategy for that was just to stick to my plan and stay in my own lane. And once I drop that last snatch, that's where I'm going to race. And I also, as you said, I had Laura to either she wins or I win that workout, and that's whoever going to win the competition. And I know she's very good at that workout. So like I said, I stayed in my lane and did what I could.
And now, obviously, you finished second overall. And I think that's still something to very much be proud of. I would argue it's your best finish of your career in a major competition like this. And what exactly do you carry with you forward from Tour Stop 2 to help you as you focus on Copenhagen?
Just the confidence I gained from being out on the floor and being able to express the fitness that I have without being injured.
That's certainly a great deal of confidence, trusting your body and being able to perform like you would expect. And the last question before I let you go, is there anything that excites you about being able to bring the competition season and all these athletes more closer to home for you in an area like Scandinavia or the Nordic countries where we don't get a lot of high level competitions of this caliber in that region?
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's pretty much as close to home as it gets for me. And it's going to be so nice to have lots of family and friends in the audience.
Well, I'm sure they're excited to cheer you on too, especially with, the performance that you had in Tour Stop 2, and hopefully we get to see it at the finals as well. Emma, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I know you're still stateside here, so best of luck in your training and prep as you start to look forward in the calendar.
Thank you.
So one final podium athlete we have not mentioned, and Seth, she was the only one to do it at both stops, Amy Kringle.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about Amy is she's very much still on her come up. So it's only been about 3 years we've been talking about her consistently. And in that short amount of time, she has moved up to being somebody that we talk about contending for a podium spot basically in every event. So we know what she's capable of. And Tour Stop 1, she came out blazing in that first workout, the very first World Fitness Project live event. She put on a show that everyone was like, whoa, okay, I think we've been put on notice by Amy here. This is pretty interesting. She, like you'd mentioned, she's the only woman to podium at both events. And I do think that is worth a lot, because we did see a shift, maybe slightly, you could call it, in the programming, just in terms of where different athletes are finishing. And I know that that's kind of part of Will's plan, is to try to balance the programming across an entire season. And for an athlete like Amy to be on the podium in two, maybe I won't call it different styles, but just different biases, different movements, things come up, she's able to overcome that. That's very impressive. She had 8 top 10 finishes out of 14 workouts and 2 tour stops, 8 top 10s, with her worst placing across 2 tour stops, 18th. That means she doesn't really have any glaring weaknesses at all. So again, that's pretty good for her. The one thing I think she's missing, other than her running capacity, which she did win the run, is just she needs some more home run hitting ability. So she can run. Everyone puts her in the top for the running events, but other than that, she needs to just improve in some of the other areas, and maybe she's a contender for the top at some point.
Yeah, and Seth, to add to that, I think the one component that I think we'll have better info on once we get to the end of this calendar year is how she manages the kind of wear and tear of competing at an elite level across an entire calendar year, right? You mentioned she's still kind of on that come up, and she's still very early as far as her elite international competition experience is concerned. So now she's going to have multiple opportunities this year, and you mix in the potential possibility of Rogue. It hasn't been announced yet, but if you do have that, then you have 5 international competitions at a major level. You mix in Wadapalooza, that's 6. Then okay, like if she is able to manage that across the year, that's another skill component that you see the aging veterans manage really, really well. How to throttle up, how to throttle down, how to manage energy across a calendar year. And I think that's one skill that we could see start to develop here in the next couple of months.
And that's a great point, and I'll say it does seem like she's doing well with that. She took top 10 at the games and then came right back in the same month and podiumed at a tour stop, where the 2 people that beat her not in that equation. So I do think she is handling that pretty well.
Yep.
They've got something really special going on in Worcester between herself, Harry Lightfoot, like Will Kane on the outside, and a mix of 2 different programming houses, but the ability to train together and get the best out of each other. I know Aniola Kai was over there training with them as well. It just, you know what it's like, it levels up. And then to have that kind of on your doorstep and where you live is even easier for these guys. It's awesome to see. Now, besides the podium finishers, we have got some athletes who over the course of the season have improved, and we've got some that have maybe lost a few points, like stock up, stock down. These athletes, Seth, they both competed in the pro division at both tour stops. Brooke Wells, strong performance.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know which Brooke we were going to get. So Brooke's been in the game a very long time, over a decade. We've been watching her compete at the highest level. It did seem like in recent years, something was pulling her away from being able to keep up with the very, very best. And maybe it was an intangible thing. Who knows? As athletes kind of progress in the sport, things happen, right? So whatever. But she started off with a run, mid-pack, not great. And so I kind of said, okay, this is the same Brooke we've been seeing now for a little bit of time here. What's going to happen? But then, not sure what happened. All of a sudden, she just starts finishing top 10, top 10, top 10. And no one's really talking about her, but quietly, she's working her way up the leaderboard. Every time you see a leaderboard update, she's up there. Her sister's up there. Maybe it has a little bit to do with the programming. Maybe she's just kind of on her come up. But I will say the one thing that really said, okay, maybe Brooke is back. Maybe she really is going to make a push here, is the way she approached workout 5. I haven't seen a spark in an athlete like that in quite some time. The way she raced workout 5. And I know that it's a stronger event for her. She's good on her hands. She can push a bike, but she could have just picked her pace and hung out. She didn't. She really pushed back at the leaders of that workout, finished very, very strong. And that spark is kind of the thing you want to see in athletes, to know, okay, they're still in it mentally. They really still want this. They're not just participating. And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, maybe she's got a good shot. She finishes 4th overall. I think you got to talk about her being a legit top 10 contender.
Yeah, for sure. And Tommy, I know, like, obviously you've got people who've edged up and have really like proved themselves in the second tour stop, but there may be a couple of people who were a little bit disappointed in their own performances out on that floor as well.
Yeah, I think there's many ways to approach this kind of topic, and you look at, the success Fisagafi had in Tour Stop 1, and then, seemingly the comparative lack of success in Tour Stop 2 with a regression as far as the overall leaderboard is concerned. But I think then you have to take a look at the differences and variances in programming, right? The emphasis on the high power output, the fact that there were 3 workouts in Mesa where you had to have a very, very high sustained output on the machines. And in those 3 workouts, she finished 23rd or lower. You mix in the run, which isn't her strong suit. another 23rd place finish. And it was just not the weekend for her as far as if you had to pick out certain programming that fits her particular style, especially when you consider Tour Stop 1 had a ton of the upper body pulling gymnastics, like I mentioned with Emma Tall. But there's still things to rally around. You go to her finish on the clean event. She had an 11-pound PR in an event where, she hadn't broken 230 pounds before, and she gets 241. It's still an 18th place finish. But for her, that's still something you can rally around. Like, hey, I'm not the best at these machines. I'm starting to see improvements in my overall strength, and understand that if we blend the two and get back to something similar in, the final stop in Copenhagen, she can start to pick herself back up the leaderboard again.
I've just flipped straight onto her Instagram because she kind of wrote quite a nice review of this herself, and kind of this idea that she'd snagged some highs, but also collected a good amount of lows, but learning from the things that didn't go quite so right. She said she's going to be a whole lot better these next months for it. Learning the hard way and getting consistently exposed is never fun, but it's also what fires me up to return to that competition floor. And she is going to be one of the women who has secured herself part of that challenger group that's heading to Copenhagen, because her overall performance has been, something pretty spectacular, given she didn't come in with a pros card at the start of the season. In fact, that can be said of a lot of the challengers, Tommy. The overall strength of that field.
Yeah, you look at a lot of the women that are now going to Copenhagen that are in search of a pro card that had to earn their way and didn't get the automatic invite. And I think we've consistently seen them compete across the season in individual events. And you look at Pro 2 in Mesa, 4 of the top 7 women were from those challengers. Pro 3, 2 of the top 4. Pro 4, the top 3 were all challenger women. So on any given workout, you're having these women that didn't come in with the pro card competing with the best and outdueling some of the best in the sport. And I think that theme is just going to continue. And you have, you carry over some of the themes from Tour Stop 1 and the emergence of the Norwegian contingent and all of the talent that you're seeing in Europe, in particular from the women's division. And now we get to go over to Europe and they get to essentially play a home game. And that makes me excited for the full breadth of this strength of field for the women's side. And I think they're going to put on a show for sure.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And at the top of that list, Seth, Annika Greer, she has been nothing short of phenomenal, not just in like the World Fitness Project, but her entire year has really come together.
Yeah, I mean, and what's interesting about Annika is kind of the way that she broke into this. She had, I think it was 3 seasons in a row where she missed qualifying for the CrossFit Games by like either one place or by a user error of the the leaderboard online. And so she's kind of been waiting for an opportunity to really break out. I think last year she was pretty solid overall with her performances, but this year, like you said, was really where she started to show up. And she did well as a challenger in Tour Stop 1, and then immediately followed that up with a top 10 CrossFit Games finish. Like top 10 of the games is a very, very hard thing to do. It's a lifetime accomplishment, and then comes back and then really just kind of crushes Tour Stop 2 here. I didn't know, again, Annika is still just in her breakout season, so to speak. So when she came in 26th place on the run in the first event, I was like, okay, we know running's not her strong suit, but how is this games season and everything else prior to that, all the other events she did, impacting her overall feeling in the second tour stop? She shut me up right away in the second workout, finishing second overall. Again, strong movement. She's great with gymnastics, especially pressing gymnastics. And she's probably maybe the best female squatter in the entire field. So, and it's not just for weight. She squats very strong, but she can squat for reps and speed like you have never seen. So workout 6 was great. And of course she hit that massive clean. The thing I will say about her, though, is, again, machines aren't necessarily her strong suit. She still has a lot of holes just based on, I guess, the size of her. Her lever length is not going to be advantageous in a lot of different movements. But she's definitely on the come up when you see consistency like this. She's going to the finals. Like I said, top 10 at the games. Like she's no longer a challenger in my mind. She may not have the pro card yet, but she is at that pro level. And so that's kind of how I look at her versus the field.
It feels like this year there has just been this kind of new wave of young athletes that have come through and really impressed on the biggest of stages. And for me, Annika Greer is like kind of one of the leading charges of that. I think there was a kind of a narrative that was kind of being created around her of all these near misses, and that's how she was beginning to be like kind of remembered by. And then off the back of the games into that tour stop 2, I feel like she's completely shattered that narrative and is able to now like push on with confidence in her ability to compete on the biggest stage. So I'm very excited to see her in Copenhagen.
I
But
think she's
Jets,
erased. Those near misses are close to being erased with how well
yeah,
she's done now. Like it's not the thing you talk about anymore. It's ooh, when's the next squatting event we can see Annika go do?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
I,
that's
I want to see
really
her with a barbell.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, and if you talk to anyone in her camp, I think it was easy to catch on to that narrative, but anyone around her was like, it's not a matter of if, but when. It's going to happen
Right.
because she keeps coming back and she keeps reloading and keeps, training hard. And so it's, yeah, that becomes the narrative, but everyone in her camp and who knew her well was confident that she was going to be able to shake this at some point.
Yeah. Right. Before we close out, let's go around the group. I want to know one person, Tommy, who we've not mentioned, who caught your eye.
For me, it was Belgium's Manon Angones, and it really started with the last 2 workouts on Sunday. And I want to pull out real quick because you look at her overall standings from the first 2 tour stops: 19th, 15th. A slight improvement, heading in the right direction. She's probably not an athlete that gets a ton of fanfare in the same way as you do when you're consistently in the top 10, but she was one of the pro card athletes. She is going back home, and she said in her post-game interview, she's like, I'm just so homesick. I miss my boyfriend. I miss my home. I miss my dogs. And you can tell that the impact of actually going back over to Europe for this finals is going to matter. But what stood out to me and caught that eye and made me start to think about this more is in Pro 5, she came out hot. She was towards the front in that top women's heat. She was kind of toe to toe with Laura and a couple other athletes. And, that's not necessarily something you might peg her for as far as like that being a strength. She ultimately kind of hit the wall and fell off. And I think she had a bottom 5 finish in that test. And especially on Sunday when they reseed going into the final workout, she got dropped from one of those top heats. And you're like, man, that can really demoralize an athlete sometimes. But what does she do? She rebounds. And from the first heat, she goes out and sets a time in Pro 6 that nobody could catch. And I think a lot of people forgot about by the time we got to that top women's heat with how the overall leaderboard points were shaking out. So to go from that, taking a shot and missing, coming right back and winning an event, for me, that's a way to kind of finish on a high note and reset and show some mental fortitude as an athlete that I think could ultimately benefit her now that we are going back to her area of the world, so to speak. And she is in a good position to still secure a pro card. So for someone that hasn't got a lot of fanfare, that's something I think is certainly worth kind of hanging your hat on.
All right, Seth, what about you?
I think we have kind of a similar story here. I'm looking at Ella Wilkinson, and she was one of the names that was on the cut line and at certain points, not on the correct side of the cut line. And so I'm sure that was brought to her attention that she needs to make moves. And sometimes you're a little helpless in terms of situations like that because sometimes you need help from other people and you can only do so much. But that wasn't necessarily the case for Ella. She actually, because she was in that pro division, could earn quite a few points. And she, again, all weekend kind of teetering right there. It started to get close. And then when it came time to push, she found her spot that she knew she could push in. And that was also in workout 5. We saw her racing up and down the floor, taking advantage of that. And not that she had the most amazing finish, 8th place, very solid, but I think it's the grittiness that I appreciate of that. Like there's a time and a place to take a shot, to take your chance. And you could see her body language was very, very clear that she was going to leave it out on the floor in that event and take her chance. And I just like seeing when athletes kind of take their shot and opportunity. You can see when they're waiting for it and almost a little strategic with it. Ella's not someone we get to talk about that much overall in the whole sport. But now, across 2 tour stops, she made her way from 26 in tour stop 1. Again, that's a big hill to climb, to 18th in tour stop 2. Eight places is substantial in this field. And so to see her pull it together and qualify for the finals and see where it shakes out there, I just think that was a really great performance from her. And so it's good to see.
In general, I think Ella Wilkinson, because she's someone coming from the UK that I've seen on the competition circuit for years and years and years. And she was always very, very good, but never kind of considered amongst kind of that top elite as soon as we got out of the major UK-based competitions, and then she kind of like came into the European, kind of into the sanctional season, but you'd see a kind of mid to lower field, and then now it's like bam, Ella Wilkinson like really is coming to be a very competitive force nowadays. And I don't think it'll be long until she's kind of up there like Amy Kringle did in these last 2 years, that she'll be starting to kind of push it at that level as well. So I'm super excited just with how well she's done recently.
I think she needs a little breakthrough like this to build confidence too. I've talked about this in other shows where like people at this level just need to get their reps in. They need to have live competition experience at the highest level. And this is an opportunity for her. She showed that when it was crunch time, she could make the move she needed to make to qualify. She did it. That's got to be a massive confidence boost moving forward in any event.
Yeah, for sure. Well, from an Ella to an Emma, I thought for me, Emma Lawson, I just think the way that she has developed over the 2 tour stops, a 7th place finish at tour stop number 2. I appreciate that looks on paper like a step back. Taking 6th at the initial tour stop was what was initially impressive, because she came off the back with no expectations of taking some time away due to her injury and building back slowly. So 2 top 10 finishes when I think the season was a bit more of a testing period for her was incredible. But going back to tour stop number 2, it wasn't necessarily about kind of improving on the leaderboard. It was how she attacked that opening day, from a standalone endurance test to that gymnastics kind of pressing grinder. Her engine and strict handstand push-up capacity was unbelievable. And I think if she had fared a little bit better on event number 3, it might have kind of kept her. I think that event number 3 did keep her from converting kind of that day 1 lead a little bit. And I think in general, she had a really kind of competitive weekend where she proved to herself that she was back and able to take on some of these top level athletes that we've seen her, beating before. She did it with a real kind of like composure and poise in a way that was very mature. She, I think, enjoyed herself. And I know that's something that we, it's kind of part and parcel of competing. Sometimes you enjoy it. Sometimes it's probably the hardest weekend of your life. But when you're enjoying what you're doing, it shows on the floor. And the more that she's enjoying it, especially after taking a bit of a step back, I think the better performances are going to come. And she's also trying new things. I mean, I say it's new, it's not new at all, but her emphasis on endurance and zone 2 training as a way to train smarter for her body. I think she's kind of also offering the wider world some very kind of clever ways to adapt training that might be better suited to her and her life at the moment. But this is a really good and very strong indication that like Emma Lawson is going to be fierce, not just in Copenhagen, but in the years upcoming. Yeah, and that opening day to end day 1 in the lead, we were like, oh, go on, girl. She was awesome. Yeah. She was utterly brilliant. But anyway, let's take a little look at those 30 women slated to compete in Copenhagen at the finals. I mean, there are some pretty massive names there, and it's going to be some serious competition. I mean, there are 2 at the bottom. Hayley Adams, Emma McQuaid, we've not even seen on the competition floor yet this season. I'll be excited they do choose to come to Copenhagen, just to see how they might mix up the field. But also if they don't, then we know it opens up some opportunities to some equally impressive challengers that we have seen over the course of the last 2 stops as well. Tommy, what's your thoughts on that leaderboard?
Well, I can't help but get the idea of double points out of my brain. We've talked about it a bunch on this show. You look at the women that are going to be taking the floor in Copenhagen, and some athletes that are going to be, hoping to kind of recapture some of the momentum built earlier in the season, whether, Alex Gazan, who won Tour Stop 1, wasn't unable to compete. She's still very much in the mix with the double points available in Copenhagen. And then you look at the race for the pro card, right? Like, in the overall point standings, 20th through 27th, separated by just 41 points. That's not a ton, and any one of those women could catapult up if they really have the weekend of their lives in Copenhagen. And I think there's a lot up for grabs with that. And that just I also like the fact that we have some distance between now and Copenhagen to help these athletes really kind of hone in on that and fine tune their training.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, I know we can't talk about every woman in this show, or we'd be here for 3 hours. But if you look near the top of the leaderboard, you have Lucy, you have Ariel, you have Danielle Brandon. Like, they're not far off. So we talked about a number of people who could make podium runs, and I mean, there's the field is deep. There's going to be a lot to play for, and when the event does get bigger, more events, more days, more things happen. Like, anything can happen. We've seen that over the years. And so, yeah, it's just a highly competitive field, and the points aren't that spread apart with the double point system like you had talked about. So, I mean, it's almost, I won't say it's like starting over, but it's so tight that realistically everyone you see in those top couple handfuls of spots are really a contender to make a big move.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate there is a lot of events to come and a lot of movement to be made, but you're just looking at those top 20 spots and those top 20 who could earn a pro card for the next season. And that battle is just riveting when you look at how tight the points already are in that like lower half of the table that exists already. And if you want to see it play out in person, guess what, team? Final tickets are still available. Oh, yeah. Scan that QR code to get your tickets now, December the 18th to 21st. It is Christmas in one of the most spectacularly beautiful cities in the entire world. And I, for one, and I'm sure I am joined by the boys, cannot wait to be there. But that is it for us and the Women's Mesa review. Be on the lookout for the men's review. That will be coming too in the next couple of days. Thank you very much to Seth Page and Tommy Marquez. My name's Lauren Smith, and this is On the Pulse. We'll see you at the next one.